So, in this episode of Widow Wisdom and Wealth, you're going to be meeting Dana Friedman. Now, Dana is a local realtor here to my Philadelphia area, but the words that she gives us in advice for families in transition looking to make a real estate move or decision are kind of nationwide. And at the very end of the conversation, I realized that she actually helps people internationally also. But during this conversation, we hit everything from how to make the emotional decision to existing in one of these 55 plus communities. But the one point that we did talk about is being able, if you're a widower or widower, within the first 2 years of losing a spouse, of using a capital gain, long-term capital gain exclusion. Now, neither of us are accountants, nor are we attorneys, nor do we hold ourselves out there. But in general, the rule is we can usually, as a surviving spouse, exclude up to $250,000 of long-term capital gain from the sale of a primary residence. Basis is pretty much what you paid for the house, plus any major improvements like building an in-law suite on the back. Not really adding paint. That's really not a major exclusion. That's cosmetic. But usually if we have the sale within 2 years of our spouse's death, the survivor may still be able to qualify for 500,000, the joint exclusion, assuming some other requirements are met. So we don't dig too deep into it during the podcast, but I wanted our listeners to know that, especially our listeners that are within the first 2 years of widowhood, deciding whether they do or do not want to stay in that long-term family home, having the ability to use the long-term capital gain exclusion might be something that you really want to lean into to accelerate that decision within the first 2 years. So adding a little bit of boring but interesting in my mind facts as you listen in on our recording today. Have a good listen. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this edition of Widow Wisdom and Wealth. I'm very happy today to introduce our Dana Friedman. She's going to be sharing with us some tips for real estate when we are going through transition. Maybe when we're making emotional decisions because we have to sell the family home through divorce or widowhood when we can't afford it anymore, or we just want to make a fresh start. So let me tell you a little bit about Dana before we dig in and formally introduce her. Dana is an entrepreneur, a networker, and a woman with a passion for real estate and home ownership. She is a dedicated realtor with 10 plus years experience. Her friends often turn to her for real estate needs and market insight, and she truly gets to know her clients and advocates to help them solve their problems and empower them through the home buying and selling process. How does this all happen? Well, because she listens and she shares her knowledge. Learning what is important to her clients allows her to help her clients achieve their goals. She leans into supporting our families in transition through real estate transactions because a little bit of empathy is often needed during emotional transactions, especially when we have to sell our homes in deep times of grief. More than anything, she holds their hands, provides her services more like a concierge. And I have had the pleasure of knowing Dana for a few years now, just through networking together, and have had shared experiences from some of our clients. And they highly recommend her out here. And I was like, hey, you want to come do a podcast with me about helping our families move when in transition? So welcome so much.
Thank you so much for having me, Donna.
Oh, it's a joy for you to be here, and I call it in our boxes. So, just for the listeners, they always do so much better when they know a little bit about you personally, what drives you, what motivates you. So, just share that with us, and then maybe share like how you've helped one of these families in transition as an example.
Yeah, absolutely. I got started in real estate as a third career. I wasn't very good sitting at a desk and 9 to 5 just didn't fit with my personality style. I love meeting new people, networking, and really helping and supporting them. And a good friend and mentor of mine, said, "Well, have you thought about real estate?" And I got to learn more about it. And 14 years later, I'm still here doing it. So I truly do love it. And I think the best part of it is really being there for people when they're going through these emotional times because you really sometimes just don't even know the questions to ask. And I love being a resource for them.
I love it. So, give us an example of someone like us, widowhood, divorce, blended families that you've worked with before, how you gave that special edge and some things that you love to see that worked, maybe didn't work, or that we should all consider.
Yeah, so I recently had a lovely couple that I was introduced. Fortunately, it was very amicable. And I think that having open and honest communication from the start is really key to being successful because there is so much that goes on. I call it the real estate roller coaster. You have the highs and the lows, and it's not easy throughout the entire, production of it. So being able to talk to both parties, whether you are going through a divorce or if you are widowed, if there's other people that need to be involved in that decision making process, is so key and important. So I really make sure that we all sit down and have a very honest and open conversation to make sure everybody's on the same page. And then I can have the opportunity to explain to them what they can expect during this process, whether they've sold 10 homes or this is the first home that they've ever been through. And then also be there to answer questions. There's no such thing as a dumb question or a stupid question. And sometimes I learn something too. Every property is different. If you have an HOA community versus a single family home, there could be very different nuances that we need to discuss and plan for. So having that preparation before we even put the market on, the house on the market is so important and key to being successful.
Love that. So one of my questions for many of my clients that are going through maybe a divorce situation is, okay, how much is the house worth, right? How would you even start that, or should they be? I mean, we call it doom scrolling. When someone goes out there on Google or on Zillow or on Redfin and they're like, it's worth this, right? How do you approach that? Because for so many of my clients that are many of times just divorced, it's the family home. It's emotional. They want to hold on to it because they don't want anything to change for their kids. But we have to have those considerations of, well, can you afford to buy the other person out? The value and quality of money in retirement versus the house. And can you afford to keep up the house, the taxes, the maintenance, things like that? So if someone's first thinking about divorce and it's like, oh my God, do I have to sell a house or not? Talk us through how you would guide your clients.
Yeah, I think number one is figuring out what is your monthly payment right now? And is that a comfortable payment for you to take on your own? Or is that very uncomfortable? And if that is a very uncomfortable number, especially when you have to consider other factors, where before maybe you were splitting bills 50-50, and now everything, all the utilities, all the maintenance is going to fall on you, does that still make sense? Unfortunately, what the house is worth or what we can sell it for is very subjective and it's going to depend on a lot of different factors. Number one being what the house currently looks like, meaning have you done any updates or upgrades to the home, such as like a kitchen renovation, putting an addition on, finishing a basement. These are things that are going to add value to the property. Things like paint, new carpet, a new appliance are nice, but they're not going to add the same amount of value. Because at the end of the day, what the home is worth is what a buyer is willing to pay for it. And if you go and get an appraisal from a bank, it can be very different from bank to bank. So if you go to your mortgage company and get an appraisal and they give you a number and it's June 2025, and then you go to put your house on the market and it's January 2026, that number may be very different because the demand of the market may be very different. Time periods where more buyers are shopping, or if the mortgage rates have recently dropped, so now buyers have a higher buying power, it's going to have a huge impact in what the value is going to be seen for your home. So part of that process, we absolutely Google your home and we look at realtor.com, Zillow, Redfin, because you will see so many different numbers and such a vast spread of what that number could be. I've seen as much as $200,000 difference. It's crazy. And of course, everybody that's selling wants that top number, and everyone buying wants that bottom number. And at the end of the day, we need to make sure that we're achieving your goal. And sometimes that's not always about the bottom number. Sometimes it's about a timeline. You need to be out of this house by a certain time because you can't afford the mortgage payment anymore. Sometimes it's about having the flexibility to stay in the home till the school year is out. So by strategizing, and when we put the house on the market, it's going to have an impact in how you get the top number or the best time frame for your home. So there's not one particular thing. It's definitely a strategy, and having a realtor that knows the local market, knows some of those competitive strategies for you, and also somebody that you feel comfortable with talking, having those hard conversations is really key to being successful in the process.
God, I love how eloquent you are about it. You're just calming. All right, so now most of our listeners are widows and widowers, right? And so many of them might be very recent. And we always kind of lean in, especially for our older widows and widowers, in reference to someone that might have raised their kids in the house for 40 years and a spouse passes. And it's what we call the long-term capital gains exclusion. So I'm not an attorney nor an accountant, nor are you. So we're not giving advice. But in general, can you talk about what things impact, such as additions to the house versus improvements? So there's some clarity for people that might be considering, should I be using my spouse's benefit in the first 2 years, or is this not going to be too much of an impact for me? Your turn.
Yeah, absolutely. I think anytime you add square footage to your home, that adds value. Anytime you do major updates, such as like a full kitchen renovation, meaning new cabinets, new plumbing, new countertops, new backsplash, all of that together has an impact. A new bathroom, thinking about gutting an area and completely making everything in it brand new, that's going to have the most value and the most bang for your buck. So when people tell me I have a little bit of extra money, what is going to be the best thing for me to do? The cheapest things are number one, declutter. Number two, fresh coat of paint gives it a facelift. Think about how you look without makeup versus with makeup, right? It just enhances the beauty. Same thing with paint. And then the third thing is if you do have that nugget and want to make that investment, looking at what a kitchen or bath renovation might do for the value of your home. This is especially important if you have been in your home for, say, 30 or 40 years and you haven't done any of those updates in the past 30 or 40 years. That can make a big, big impact in what you're going to sell your house for.
So then which type of improvements can add to the basis to the value? So when we talk about basis, for those who are just kind of tuning in, relaxed on a drive, not going to try to get too complicated, but let's say I bought my house for 200,000 and I put improvements into the house. Some of them might have been a new garage, right? Adding square footage. The other one might have just been adding carpet, right? Basis, from my understanding, is adding something like you just said, square footage. So that if I go to sell the house, the profit is based on my basis plus the selling price. Is that correct?
Yep, exactly. And what we'll do is we'll also do an analysis for you. We call it a comparative market analysis, CMA, where I look at all the homes that have sold within a radius of your home. Typically, it's in the same school district, the same zip code, and we look at what those homes sold, also when they sold, because time of year can have a very big difference. A home that sold in January might have different numbers than a home that sold in July and August, which tends to have a lot more buyers on the market. And we can see kind of how those homes break down by square footage and also what they look like, right? A home that has all carpet, nothing's been updated versus a home that has put in new hardwood floors, has put on additions in the home. And we can, look at those numbers a little more detailed. But every single house is subjective. And I do say, even if it's not your time right now, it's always good to check in with your realtor every 6 months to a year. We can do those reevaluations for you and see how those numbers look. They could have gone up, they could have gone down too.
Wonderful. And let's talk about, you said the magic word of decluttering, right? Sometimes that can be really, really hard, especially when there's some emotional items, or if we've lost a spouse that maybe we're just not ready to deal with yet, but we have to move. We financially can't afford to stay, or maybe we were relocated for work. That was the case for some of the widows I saw when we lived abroad. If the spouse passed, the widow had about 3 months to stay abroad, and then she had to go back stateside. So for these people that have to move quickly but aren't ready to sort through everything, what resources are out there for them?
Yeah, so I have some really amazing partners that actually, I work with that can help if that's something you need, such as, therapy, if you need someone to help you with home organization, like actually physically packing up some of the stuff, movers, if you need to move it from your home, maybe into a storage unit. All those things can help. And, if you're not quite sure where you're going to go, but you know that there are things that either your children don't want or you don't want or have a need for anymore. Sometimes also it feels really good to make donations to others that maybe could use those. So connections that I have, with different nonprofits that will come and pick up your stuff. Maybe you have old furniture that you're not going to take to your new place. Those can also be really cathartic. And what we've done before in the past is sometimes we've had a life celebration and we say, you know what, let's invite everybody that you love and do a celebration. And if there's any items that maybe you want to allow them to take, furniture, whatever, it's a nice way to double do it, right? You can celebrate that person, talk about those great memories, but then we can also kind of declutter some of that stuff too. And then we can bring in professionals if you need to move the rest of your stuff for your new chapter.
Oh, I love that idea of the life celebration. So, in my financial planning practice, we often do events. We're doing one which is plan your own fun funeral. So that's a good one to add in, saying like, okay, instead of having, a celebration of life at a big, hall after I pass, invite everyone to the house and take the stuff you definitely want. Let them take the rest. What a wonderful idea. I kind of like it.
Right? Someone else's trash might be somebody else's treasure. So it could
Keepsake.
be a win. Yeah.
See, in my fun funeral, I always had a kibasi truck that like is going to be very hard for my kids to find. Like I want it at the house, so we could put that together. I already have the celebration at the house. Now I'm going to be like, all right, guys, we're going to downsize with the party. So that sounds like fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Bring your U-Hauls.
That's it, everyone. Pickup trucks invited. All right.
Yeah.
So for our clients that are really considering, should I stay or should I go? And like you said, just lean in sometimes. Ask that question to a realtor. What do you think are some of the big decisions or the big thought processes that they should just sit down with pen and paper and really work through with a realtor or even on their own before they step into the next spot? I know I stayed put in widowhood in my house for about 2 years until my kids sat me down and were like, Daddy passed here. We don't feel comfortable. We want to go. And you don't know how fast you put a sale sign on the front of the house. And then I quickly pivoted to go find a fixer-upper. Now that fixer-upper was a big fixer-upper and expensive, and I was kind of in over my head, except for the fact I met a wonderful contractor who is now my husband. So that did work out. But if I had not met my husband and looked at the silver lining 13 years later, I think that might have been very, very different for me. So tell me some of those thoughts that maybe we can say to our listeners before we go of, okay, just sit down for a little bit and think about this.
Yeah, if you had 24 hours and had to make this decision, what would it look like if you stayed? What would you have to change about your current lifestyle? And then also the complete 180 of that. What if in 24 hours you had to get out of here? What would that look like? How would you go about that? Where would you want to live? And I think not having that pressure on you and being able to make some of those decisions is really, really helpful, but also kind of talking through that too. Sometimes some people like to process that themselves. Some people like to talk through that with somebody else. I'm going through it right now with my own mother. Her husband passed, and you know, in the moment, it was like, okay, let's get the house on the market, and we got to a point where it was like, you know what, emotionally, she's really just not ready for this. It's too much change in her life. Um, so it's been 2 years now, and now we're talking about it again. And it's like, okay, what does it look like? Is now the right time? Because now it's getting to the point where it's very much a burden. It's a massive house. She does not need this to heat, to cool, to clean, and she's ready. And I think that when you have that moment to process it, not under pressure, is really, really important. So sitting down with someone and thinking about, say, God forbid, you had a fire and you had to be out of this house, where would you go? Where would you want to go? Right? Versus what if staying here, what would that look like? How would that make you feel? Would it add on stress or would it add on relief knowing that you don't have to move? And I think that's a really important conversation to have.
I love it. Now, in the beginning of our intro, we actually talked about how you have almost like a concierge type of service. And I know myself how many people actually play a role when we're going to go ahead and buy a home, from the contractor to the inspectors to the mortgage broker. So tell us a little bit of all the different professionals that you have good relationships with, contacts with, that for someone who says, I don't know where to start, you can say, ah, I got this team in place for you.
Yeah, I mean, being in this industry for so long, I truly do. I have a tool belt of people. Anywhere from a painter, plumber, electrician, like all those basic people, to the more specific stuff too. You know, if you want someone that will pack up your home, movers, if you do need a home inspector, a roofer, a landscaper, the whole gamut, interior designers, if you do want to do some of those upgrades, contractors. Then there's also things that people don't always think about, like my contacts that I have with different city planners, county officials, because sometimes things take permits. So having some of those contacts and ins can make things go a lot smoother, a lot faster. And that has made a huge impact and difference. Just the fact that they don't have to make those phone calls and call and set up appointments, hope that they show up, hope that they, get back to them with quotes. These are people that I have personally vetted and typically pick up the phone because they know me and I'm doing multiple deals with them versus an individual who maybe is going to call them one time in their entire life. I'm calling them 10 or 20 times a month for all the different families that I'm helping. So it just takes that added pressure off. Oh, you need an HVAC person? No problem. Can I have them come tomorrow? Great. Like I can just do that for you. And you're like, oh, it's done. It's taken care of. It alleviates one more thing on your task that you have to worry about.
I love it. And then just one last conversation I'd love to bring up because it's a big one because, well, a lot of my widows and widowers, they're a little bit older in life and they're looking for these areas to do semi-retirement, not a nursing home, not an assisted living, a community. We used to call them 55 plus, right? Or gated communities. Oh God, I'm 52. So I'm like, oh my gosh, can I go soon? No, I have teenagers.
Right?
I can't. But can you talk a little bit about how some of those 55 plus, and we're in the Pennsylvania region right now, how are they designed? How do they work? And some of the costs that people might not know behind the scenes, if you don't mind.
Yeah, not at all. So we always look at, where do you want to go? And usually if you're looking to move into one of those communities, you're not as concerned anymore about school district, which gives you a lot more flexibility. So then the second thing is, what are some amenities that maybe you never had, you've always wanted? Maybe you're avid tennis player or a swimmer, or maybe you're just looking for that community, like other people that you can hang out with and do things with. And every single community will have different things to offer. They'll also have additional costs. So, something that not everybody is aware of if you've never lived in one of those communities is there's usually something called an HOA, which is a homeowners association. And it's usually a monthly fee that you pay on top of like your mortgage and your insurance and your utilities. But sometimes certain things are part of that HOA fee. There's also sometimes something called a capital contribution, which is a one-time fee that you pay at settlement, and that goes into the reserves for the community for future updates. So HOA monthly payments and capital contributions, and they can vary from community to community. Also within the community, if you're getting a condo versus if you're getting a townhome, those prices can look different because a condo, you only own the four walls inside the home. The community then will take care of all the exterior versus a townhome. Sometimes you're still responsible for the exterior of your home. So it can vary very much. And it's important that you have a realtor that's familiar with that. Also to decide, which is going to be the best for your lifestyle. You might be very active right now, but in 20 years from now, maybe you're not going to want to do stairs. So is one floor living better for you, or is two floor living fine because you got a hip replacement and you're good to go? Or maybe, the property that you're in has an elevator, so it's not a concern when you get to that point. But yeah, pricing definitely can be very different in 55 and older communities, depending on what the different fees are and also the rules. If you have a pet, some places allow you to have pets, some don't. So it's really important that you know and understand all the rules of the community so that way you're not faced with any issues down the line.
Yeah, another reason why I can't go. Way too many pets. We're like Noah's Ark around here. So just to
Me
record
too.
this, I'm just closing the door, hoping no one barks. So all good. All right. Any parting words of wisdom you'd like for our widowed and widower listeners about should I stay or should I go?
I think the most important thing is that you're not alone. You're not the first person to go through this, and you're not the last person to go through this. And the best thing that you can do is really, share your concerns with professionals such as yourself as well. Having that financial advisor there, your realtor, your estate attorney, your CPA, so that way you can get all of those answers, all of those questions figured out ahead of time when you're not under pressure so that you can make a, a really great choice for you. It's always going to be an emotional one, but I think when you can make one with trusted advisors around you, you feel much more confident in your decisions.
I love those words. Trusted advisors. They are your professional team. We always say, like many of times for those in widowhood, you don't have your best friend to lean in on and to have these conversations with. They might have passed. So to have those trusted advisors and resources that are vetted even before you dig in sometimes is just so heartwarming. And I appreciate what you do out there for our families in transition. Thank you so much.
Of course. Well, we're fortunate, to have great people like you too, because I don't have all the answers. Please don't ask me to do any major math or financial stuff. I will be calling Donna for all of that.
All right. So how can people get in touch with you? And we'll make sure we put some of your contact information in the podcast bio lines.
Yeah, absolutely. Phone number is definitely the best. Calling and texting 215-901-4522. I always have my cell phone with me. Email is also great. You can get me at downtown2devon@gmail.com. And I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So really Google me and I promise I'll pop up somewhere and I would love to help you.
So when you're doing that Google scroll, looking at Zoom and Redfin and everything else, go ahead, Google Dana Friedman's name and just see where she pops up, see what area she represents. And if not, she can actually get you connected to other realtors that she trusts throughout the US, correct?
Yeah, so one of the things, part of my concierge services is I have expanded to not only just in the US, but also outside the US. And I've been able to help a lot of families. I do a concierge service where I actually find you the best realtor. So if somebody is looking to sell their home here in Pennsylvania and then they want to go move to Florida, I have trusted partners already vetted in Florida that we can connect you with that can help you with your new home purchase or vice versa. If you're selling a home in a different state and want to come to Pennsylvania, I've done both ways. So give me a call and let me do all the hard lifting for you so you can just enjoy your new chapter.
I love that. So, listeners, as we're recording this, the Philadelphia area is just coming out of a blizzard. So, yes, Philadelphia to Florida, Philadelphia to Cottonwood, Arizona, Philadelphia to anywhere warm would be fantastic. Thank you, Dana. So, all right, loves. Thank you so much for spending time with us. For our listeners out there, feel free to pop onto the notes of the podcast to see how you can get connected and lean in if you have any questions. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Donna.